Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, and this is the podcast where we interview experts from around the world on how we can use presentation skills to move our listeners to take action. I'm a presentation skills trainer, but I know there's so much more behind that. Leadership, visibility, what is it that has you step out and be a presenter? Whether you're presenting on stage or in a meeting or just to one influential person, there are hundreds of tools and strategies that we can use. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you to take our free assessment at www.speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com. It takes about 3 minutes, and that's where you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where you might want a little bit of support. Today's guest is Charlene Li, who is one of my favorite people and super smart, very interesting. I first interviewed her in December of 2019. And due to some technical complications, we didn't get a chance to broadcast it right away. I'm now talking in April of 2020, where we're in the middle of working from home, the COVID-19 shutdown. We don't know what's coming up. And I thought that Charlene would be the perfect person to interview. So this is in 2 parts today. We have the original interview about leadership and disruption mindset, and then a bonus interview about how we can look at leadership nowadays in the current scary situation that we find ourselves in. Charlene Li, for the past 2 decades, has been helping people see the future. She's an expert on digital transformation, leadership, customer experience, and the future of work. She's the author of 6 books, including the New York Times bestseller, Open Leadership, and co-author of the critically acclaimed book, Groundswell. Her latest book is the bestseller, The Disruption Mindset. She's the founder and senior fellow at Altimeter, a disruptive analyst firm acquired in 2015 by Profit. That's Profit, Prophet, not profit and loss profit. Named one of the most creative people in business by Fast Company, Charlene is a graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Business School. So once again, you're going to hear 2 parts of this. When I say thank you and goodbye the first time, stay with us because we have the second part of the interview following right after that. And now for Charlene Li. Hello, and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and I am delighted to have you here. This is the podcast where we talk about how we present ourselves as leaders, as speakers, and how do we actually use what we know, our presentation skills, in order to get the results that we want. Basically, if you're going to present yourself, how do you present yourself in a way that gets your listeners to do what you want them to do? Whether you're in a meeting or doing a keynote speech, speaking to promote your company or speaking to promote your services, it's all presentation skills. And the cool part is there's hundreds of years of tools that we can use to make our presentations better, to learn more. And before we start, I'd like to invite you to go over to our free assessment at www.speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com. You could take the quick assessment. It takes 4 or 5 minutes, and you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where maybe you could use a little support. And now I am so excited to invite the amazing, wonderful, stunning, smart Charlene Li. So Charlene, welcome to Speakers Who Get Results.
Thank you for having me here.
Okay. I'm so excited to have you here. I've been following you for some time, and we actually met a little over a year ago, and we're part of a similar group, and rather awestruck by all the things that you have done. Charlene is the principal analyst at Altimeter, which is a profit company, and she's one of the foremost experts on business and technology. She's got deep knowledge of leadership, strategy, interactive media, and marketing, which makes her an indispensable ally in today's rapidly evolving marketplace. She's the author of 6 bestsellers, most recently, The Disruption Mindset. And before starting Altimeter, Charlene was a vice president and principal analyst at Forrester Research. She's worked in online newspaper publishing, and she was a consultant with the Monitor Group. She was also named one of the top 50 leadership innovators by Inc. and one of 100 most creative people in business by Fast Company. She's also frequently quoted by leading media channels such as the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, USA Today, many, many, many. And she's even been on 60 Minutes, which is my family's favorite Sunday night program. So 60 Minutes and many, many others. Charlene, I am thrilled to have you with us. Before I start, I ask everybody this question. Who would be your dream interview? If you could be on stage with somebody to interview somebody from history, who would it be and what would you talk about?
The person who I grew up just being, who was my hero in many ways, is a woman by the name of Helen Keller. And she was born in Alabama in the late 1800s. And when she was 3, she got a horrible fever and became blind and deaf. So imagine living in a world where you can't hear or see anything. And like the most basic ways to communicate and connect with the world is gone. And she got a teacher who, when she was about 10 years old, connected with her finally. And the whole world opened up to her with language and connection. She went on to get a bachelor's degree. She was the first deaf and blind person to go and get a degree in college. She went to Radcliffe, actually, and became a prolific writer, a public speaker, suffragist, activist. And I like her story because when you think about all the things that are allied against you, all the obstacles you have to overcome, she overcame some of the most debilitating disabilities. And it never stopped her. And so I would love to be able to interview her. And
what would you ask her about then?
I would like, how did you keep going? And not only did you just keep going, you went above and beyond what even anybody else was doing. And doing it at a time when women were not seen as leaders, not seen as having permission to go out there and do this. And so none of that stopped her. None of her stopped her from being able to go do all of these things. So like, what kept her going? Because it must have been so hard.
You know, this is really interesting because I've been asking this question about everybody, and over, I have people say, I'd like to interview so-and-so about how she kept going. Mostly, if you're interviewing women, how did you keep going? One of my Stephen Kirsch, one of these podcast episodes, wanted to interview Gandhi. And he said, Gandhi, how did you keep going? So I think there's really something to be said about putting one foot in front of the other and keeping going. So That's going to be great. I would absolutely be in the audience for that one. I would love to hear that.
But the second question was, how did she think big? Because that is the other question that I usually ask people. It's like, what gave you that ambition? How did you think that it was even possible to go to college? How did you think that you could go onto the world stage and make a difference in the world?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you think it could be you? How did you pick yourself? And it's something in particular that I wonder for myself, and I encourage other women in particular, people early in their careers, is how do you think big? How do you play bigger than where you are comfortable? How do you reach for promotions? How do you have ambitions more than anybody has ever said you have permission to do? So, because I think when we are encouraging ourselves and the people around us, the people we are nurturing and developing to think bigger, constantly thinking bigger, they will achieve bigger things.
Wow, that's actually great, which leads me to my next question. You have recently published your 6th book, right, called The Disruption Mindset. And it's about disrupting and leading, and all about leadership. My first question is, you and I were both in Northern California, so we're around the whole Silicon Valley thing. Maybe it's the Silicon Valley bubble. Why is disruption such a big thing? Why do we want to disrupt things? Why can't we just stick with the tried and true? Do we have to throw everything out to be disruptive?
Well, I think, again, in Silicon Valley, we have this very distinct way of thinking about disruption as a new technology, out with the old, in with the new. And I think about it as a different way. I think of disruption as what happens when you grow really quickly. And I think everybody wants to grow. And what if you could grow not X next year, but 2X? What would it take?
So not by 2X, you mean, so not everyone's an English speaker. Not everyone's a Silicon Valley speaker here on this listener. So what do you mean by X or 2X?
So if you plan on growing 10% next year, a pretty decent rate, for some industries, very high. What would it take to grow twice as much of that? 20X. If you wanted to go, if you're a nonprofit, you wanted to go raise $1 million for the funding that you were going to, for the things that you want to support, what would it take to raise $2 million? And so when I ask people this question, they go, oh, I know exactly what I would do. But it would be incredibly hard. It would be incredibly disruptive. I would have to do everything differently, but I would know what to do. And what I found is that people oftentimes are looking for some sort of disruption in order to drive growth. And the reality is that growth itself is disruptive. And so when you think about growing a lot, we step back away from that because that would be just too much, it'd be too hard. So I go back to, this is not about looking for disruption for disruption's sake. When somebody goes, well, could we just do things the same as we normally do? I'm like, sure, if you don't want to grow, if you don't want to do it, if you don't want to serve more people, have more impact, do more things, create more opportunities, sure, go for it. That's completely your prerogative. But if you want to do things that have greater impact, have a stronger mark in the place in the world, serve more customers, whatever the word growth means, it's going to take a lot of effort. And I can guarantee you it's not going to be easy.
Oh,
so this is having an honest discussion around what it takes to grow, what it takes to be more than just innovative. Let's have an honest discussion. Because I think in many ways, when we talk about being innovative, we want it to be easy. We want it to be smooth, not causing any problems, not getting any gray hair. And I think that's a false promise. If those kinds of innovations are very incremental, if you really want to go do big things, create a big splash, create a big change, have big impact, it's going to be disruptive. And the reason why it's disruptive is that when you do these things, it changes the balance of power in relationships. It changes the power with your customers. So customers may be causing you to be more disruptive because they're demanding more, or you may be asking them to do more. It's disruptive too inside your organization because the normal way you do things are being completely upended inside an organization now. So who does what? who has power, who has control, who has decision making, who has data and information changes in organizations. And that's disruptive until you can find a new normal. And you could also be disrupting the relationships you have inside an ecosystem or inside an industry, or thinking about new industries that you may be going into. So all of those things are highly disruptive. And that's what happens when change and growth happens.
That's great. That's really fascinating. You were saying this about, again, disruption's a big word in Silicon Valley. Is this an American attitude of everything needs to be new, or do you find this around the world?
I find this around the world. People, I speak around the world, constantly working with clients, and people want to know what's new. How do I get better? What's the new technology or new idea or new business practice I need to be aware of so that I can stay on top of things? I think it's a human nature to want to go and improve ourselves, to want to do better, to have a bigger impact, to learn, to grow. And so people want to hear what's new. And that's why it's called news. In some ways, It's all the new things. But I also think that in Silicon Valley, again, we have this huge way of thinking about it from only primarily a technology point of view. And as somebody who has been an analyst now, a technology analyst for 20 years, I can tell you with great confidence, it's almost never about the technology.
Really?
The technology is important. It is important to understand how you leverage it, how you harness the power. But in many cases, it's not about the technology, it's about the people. Because if people don't use the technology, they don't understand how to use it, how it's changing the relationships, you're not going to get any sort of results.
Oh, well, this is a perfect lead into my next question then, which is if you are not the founder of your company, if you're not the CEO, and you want to be able to use this disruptive mindset, sometimes I think when I was reading your book, I was thinking, well, actually, it's another word for doing something about your pet peeves, things that annoy you. And it's like, okay, let's fix this. How can we, as leaders, use the lessons from your book or any of your other books to show up, and then show up in a way that we can lead well and actually convince people to willingly do what we ask them to do?
Right. The core strategy of a disruptive organization, I found in my research, is to focus on future customers. And it's one thing to be customer-centric, to be customer-obsessed, to be thinking about customers. But you have to be thinking about the right set of customers. It's not the customers of today only. It's the customers of the future. Because that's how you set your strategy. You're thinking about what you're going to have to do today in order to achieve something in the future, to serve these customers in the future. Because if everything you're doing is for the customers today, you'll be meeting those needs 6 months from now, but those customers have moved on. So how do you think about making the investments today for the future? So as a leader who's not at the very top, setting strategy, I was talking to some individual contributors yesterday. They were two women just out of college going, we see so much change that has to happen. We're not even leaders and managers in our organization. How can we actually make an impact? And I said simply this: leaders are people who see an opportunity for change, to make things for the better. That's all it takes. You don't need a title to be a leader. If you can make and frame what you're trying to change or think needs to happen in the context of serving your customers, and in particular, our future emerging customers, then people will listen. If you say, I think we should do something different because I think we should be doing something different, that's not very valid. But you can root it in a common view of the customer. Draw that other person in to say, can we agree that this customer is important? Yes. Can we agree that this is a need that's emerging from this customer? Yes. Then let's take a look at how we're actually set up to meet those needs. We see a gap. How can we close that gap? that's a way to bring people in a way that holds you accountable, not to some unknown thing that's out there or power dynamics and politics inside an organization, but to the most important element and part of your ecosystem, which is your customer. You don't have them, you got no business. You have no organization.
Yeah. That's great, because that's a way that no matter who we are, whether we're entrepreneurs or whether we're working within an organization, we can show up as really future thinking, just thinking about the future customers and leading. And of course, the more you lead, the more you show up and the more visible you are, the more you are likely to move up towards being a CEO or move up, be promoted in your career, because people are going to want to work with you if you're a leader. How do you, are there rules for women versus men? So a lot of my work is helping women be heard within organizations. And sometimes it means helping them speak up. And often it's about once you're speaking up, how can you get people to listen to you? So where does are the rules different? Well, the rules are different for men or women. How do you phrase this? How do you deal with this?
I think one of the reasons, I go back to one key statistic that I saw recently, in that women will raise their hand, ask for the promotion, go for a job, start a company when they feel 100% ready. And men will do that when they're 60% ready.
Or 30%.
Or something even less. We've seen this all the time. Somebody will speak up, typically a man, will speak up in the meeting. We're like, what are you talking about? Like, they're making no sense. And it just goes, the people just kind of ignore him. They just keep going. But he spoke in the meeting. And we were like, how does he think that saying something that isn't well formulated would make a difference? He's just jabbering along. And women will do just the opposite. We will wait and wait and wait until we have completely formulated the idea and the concept and are pretty sure that it's going to be acceptable, and wait for the right moment. And then the meeting's over.
Oh, yeah.
So, or we'll wait until we're 100% ready. I talked to somebody last night and she goes, yeah, I would really love to start a company, but I need to do a few things to get ready. And I'm like, wait, what do you need to do? She was like, I need to take care of a few personal things. And I go, I hope you don't mind me asking, but are those personal things like health or family, or are they skills and capabilities? She goes, oh, skills and capabilities. I'm like, you don't need them. just go into it. And if it's a matter of your confidence, let's go talk about that. But she goes, well, I need to think about this. And I go, you just thought about it.
Mm-hmm. I really wish I'd known you when I was 25, because I think about the years that I wasted needing to be perfect, needing to be ready, needing to, be certain that I knew what to do. And, and not seeing where I was bumping into glass ceilings, things like that, instead of just stepping forward. So yeah, I wish I'd known you when I was 25.
I wish I'd known you when I was 25. I did not do this myself. I mean, yeah. I kept doing entrepreneurial things inside of companies, but I didn't start my company. I didn't start entrepreneur until I was 42. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm one of those late bloomers too, as well. And one of the issues that I found even then is I didn't know what I was doing and made a huge amount of mistakes. Still learning along the way, but now I'm actually much more comfortable kind of winging it. It's a mess, and I'm kind of comfortable with things being a mess. And yeah, it's total chaos actually. So my team's going like, what the heck? And I'm like, I'm figuring it out as we go along. Yeah. And I'm encouraging them to, I have a team of all women just by coincidence working with me. And I'm just encouraging them, like, I don't try to make it perfect. Just like send it back. Mm-hmm. Let's go launch it and then see what happens. So it's one of those things where I wish somebody had told me this earlier in my career, that they could see myself hesitating from doing that. And it's a major reason why I decided to go to Harvard Business School versus other business schools, because so much of the grade and your success is based on your ability to speak up in a classroom of 90 other hard-charging MBA students.
Yes.
And it could not have imagined a more supportive environment to try that.
Mm-hmm.
I just was really lucky in my section to have people who were just highly supportive of it, understood that when somebody was having problems, just articulating themselves, would cheer for them after they open, a case, whatever. It was just a great place to be able to practice
Mm-hmm.
being unsure,
Mm-hmm.
not confident, and faking it till you make it. So
Yes, right,
it's
right.
definitely something I learned.
Well, and that's actually another thing that that women wait until they're totally, they absolutely know what they're doing. So, and then you get passed over. So that's a useful thing. Which brings me to courage. You have a concept in the disruption mindset called the big gulp. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. I think in many times when you're having to make a big decision, do something highly disruptive, it feels awful. You just know how much is at stake, and you've done all the preparations. And finally, at the very end, you need to take a big gulp, take a deep breath, big gulp, and then jump. Most
Mm-hmm.
terrifying thing. And I talked to so many people who go, "Oh my goodness, it was so hard, but once I did it, it felt great."
Uh-huh.
Other people, again, I rarely hear people say, "Oh, it was like awful. I did this big step in." It was awful.
Uh-huh.
It was a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what I oftentimes hear from people is that even if it didn't turn out well, they're really glad they did it. They're really
Mm-hmm.
glad in hindsight that they had that opportunity to go and stretch themselves, try to push the envelope. Didn't work out, but I learned a lot. And
Yeah.
now I'm doing something different. My life has not failed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and that's what it feels like oftentimes is like, what would happen if we actually fail? In some of the cases I talked about with businesses, they made these huge bets, but they got there by making lots of little bets and feeling better and better and better. So they were prepared to make that big gulp decision. It didn't just happen overnight. So they
Yeah.
trained themselves to do this. And I think for us as leaders, we're going to it's really a preparation for those days when we're going to have to make big gulp decisions. We don't have all the information. We're not 100% sure. And we're just going to have to take that big gulp and make that decision and hope for the best. We've done everything to prepare for it, and there are no guarantees.
You talk a little bit about setting up a structure so that when you do take the big gulp or the big step into the unknown, uh, it's not out of nowhere.
Right. And again, what I found with these disruptive organizations is that they were incredibly well run, had really strong organizations and structures. And so that gave them a lot of scaffolding and a support. And I think about it from a leadership perspective, that when you're making a big gulp decision, you're putting yourself in a very vulnerable space.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot be vulnerable unless you feel safe.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Total Brene Brown. But I think one of the ideas here is that you really come into your leadership potential when you are vulnerable, because then you're showing and modeling the way for everybody else to say, this is really hard. I don't have all the answers. And the way that we're going to move forward together is to do this together. And that's what enabled a lot of these organizations to take that big gulp. They were all in together. They went around the table, I'll be all in with this. Any objections? We know what the risks are, and we're going to take it.
So
And
have a structure.
The
Have a structure and a buy-in.
structure, the buy-in, the process. I'm a big believer in this horrific word called governance. And anytime I say the word governance, people just start cringing. But it's the organizational structure, the processes, the decision-making processes, how information flows inside an organization. Really good governance allows you to be more disruptive. It's counterintuitive, because good structure, good process that is there to lay that foundation, then you can jump. You don't have to worry about how things are going to get done. You just get it done. And then you can take all of your energy on pushing hard against that governance structure and jumping really, really high. I
Yes.
equate it to
Yeah.
jumping off of sand. you can't jump very hard with sand.
Uh-huh.
In sand. And that's what it feels like when you don't have a firm foundation of organization and process and governance. You have to spend so much of your energy just pushing against your organization.
How can you do that if you are if you're not on the board of trustees or something, if you are within an organization? How does that translate to structure within your team, for instance, or within your department?
I think that within your sphere of influence, you can set up organization structure, you can set up process. How do you actually work together? What are the beliefs and the behaviors you want to see amongst each other that are going to help us focus on that customer, make sure that we are leaders in the moment, and make sure that our beliefs and our culture within our team is the way we want to do it. I was sitting down with even with CEOs, and they was like, oh, we don't have the right culture for disruption. I'm like, you're the CEO. Who are you looking to help you set the culture? The board?
Yeah.
Who else, right? And we kind of throw up our hands and say, well, we can't do anything about this. And this is why I keep going back to that discussion, like, well, if you can't, who is going to? Why are you waiting? And one of the most interesting beliefs of disruptive organizations is this belief of agency, that every single person has the power to act and believe and behave like an owner, that you own the strategy, you own our values and our mission. You personally own this, and you were hired and brought in to achieve that purpose. And so if you understand that, you understand the strategy, go for it. Be accountable for what the outcome is. And own the results, but also the impact, positive and negative. Show up as a leader and have agency. So when we say to people, like, you already have the agency, it's very different from being empowered. Because empowered says, I'm waiting for somebody over there to give me the power. I'm waiting to be empowered. That doesn't work. It has to be that you already have the power right from the very beginning, the minute you walked in the door.
Wow, that's amazing. We're almost out of time. So do you have, before my last question, do you have a thought you'd like to leave us with?
Yes, I think, again, especially for what your podcast and what you're doing is so focused on getting the results. I think more than anything, it's making sure that you are connecting personally with people who are like-minded, who are going to be able to see you and see the pushes that you need to have to be able to do that. And one thing I really encourage people to do, and especially women or people early in their careers, is to think about communications as a tool every single time you open your mouth. People say, I'm not comfortable being a public speaker. How do I become a better public speaker? I go, you do public speaking every time you open your mouth.
Yes, so absolutely.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah, it's who you are in the room. It's how you show up. Yeah. Exactly. That's wonderful. Charlene Li, this is, I said before we started, I had about 2 hours worth of questions for you, but I know you're busy. You've got places to go. How can we find out more?
Sorry, my cat is behind me.
What? Sorry, I missed that.
My cat is behind me. It's very distracting. The way to connect with me is through my social accounts. I am always Charlene Li. And on Facebook, I am Charlene Li Author. And you can also, by all means, email me, charlene@charleneli.com. And I really enjoy connecting with people. So please don't be shy. This is what I also find. I give people my contact information, and then nobody reaches out to me.
Okay. Well,
I do give that contact information out because I want to hear from people.
Well, that's great. Well, I reached out to you and you said yes. I said, woohoo, yay. I have a total star here. Yay. I'm so glad. Charlene Li, thank you so much for being with us on Speakers Who Get Results. And you can all find out more about her in the show notes. And this has been the Speakers Who Get Results podcast. I invite you to share us, like us, talk about us, tell more people if you had fun, and I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.